data supports the claim that massive amounts of easily ionized particles are another important part of the grand geophysical picture. There are some elements that can actually become charged with the energy from ultraviolet light and even visible light in some cases. Barium is one such element that falls into this category. The implications of being able to modify the atmosphere electrically and magnetically are enormous, and a variety of physical methods that are used to transfer, manipulate, control, and propagate energy in that medium must then be considered. As an example of how a small change can produce a major effect, consider the following statement from Lancaster University in the United Kingdom on the topic of the ionosphere. Quote, "Although less than 1% of the upper atmosphere becomes ionized, the charged particles make the gas electrically conducting, which completely changes its characteristics. The ionosphere can carry electrical currents as well as reflect, deflect, and scatter radio waves." Unquote. What we see, therefore, is that a small change in the electrical properties of the atmosphere, be it the upper or now lower atmosphere, completely alters the way in which that shell around the Earth can be used. This concept introduces us to the topic of plasma physics, which may be more in the grasp of common understanding than might first be believed. Most of us are familiar with a neon or fluorescent light tube. This is a perfectly common example of what plasma physics is about. In that tube, there is an ionized gas, and energy can easily be sent through that tube to produce the effect of light in that case. A plasma is an electrically conductive gas. This means that there is a source of ions and electrons within that gas, and that these electrons can be used to carry current. We have seen that it takes very little change to produce a large change in the electrical properties of that gas, and the effectiveness of energy transfer and accumulation is governed primarily by the number of electrons that can be introduced into it. The term that describes this is electron density, and it becomes increasingly important in our understanding of the likely goals of the aerosol operations. Multiple measurements of atmospheric conductivity levels, extremely low frequency and very low frequency radiation, as well as magnetic variation, support the claims made that the basic electrical properties of our atmosphere have been changed. These two physical properties alone that have been mentioned, that of thermodynamic and electrodynamic change, have the prospect of changing our world so much that even the most conservative of environmentally aware individuals should be aware of the prospect for disturbance and damage. Changes in heat and energy are at the foundation of the life of this planet and all those who dwell upon it. It is a necessary, logical, and natural extension to our discussion of applications to include the almost inevitable role the military assumes within them. Indeed, the dichotomy of extreme, sustained, and continuous interest and monitoring of the aerosol research by the military and intelligence complex, juxtaposed with the public declaration by the U.S. Air Force that this entire subject is a hoax, is curious enough that many of us may wish to seek the truth of the matter. The most advanced military agencies, intelligence services, and defense contractors clearly have an interest in monitoring and controlling the level of discussion and disclosure on the aerosol issue. The tools of research and analysis must therefore be used at least in part to compensate for the lack of openness that now shrouds this democracy under the guise of national security. A glimpse into the military window has been achieved, and a central theme will eventually emerge, and that is of control. Control in the deepest and far-reaching sense that you may imagine. For when the atmosphere of the planet is controlled, life itself, in the end, is controlled. With a basic knowledge of plasma physics, that is, the physics of an energized gas or atmosphere, it is impossible to proceed further without at least a brief introduction to the HAARP facility and technology. HAARP, or High Active Auroral Research Program, is operated by the U.S. Air Force and is claimed to be simply a research facility. The stated purpose by the Air Force for the HAARP project is that of a scientific endeavor aimed at studying the properties and behavior of the ionosphere, with particular emphasis on being able to understand and use it to enhance communications and surveillance systems for both civilian and defense purposes. It may be this, and then again, it may be more than simply a scientific endeavor. It may also be enlightening to consider United States Patent 4686605 by Bernard Eastlund in 1987, entitled A Method and Apparatus for Altering a Region in the Earth's Atmosphere, Ionosphere, and/or Magnetosphere. There are many who have sensibly concluded that this patent essentially represents a blueprint for the HAARP facility as it has been constructed. This patent makes mention of numerous objectives and methods of operation that far exceed any scientific endeavor alone, and references the work of Nikola Tesla as a source of historical contribution. The amazing inventions and achievements of Tesla with respect to energy transfer and amplification, including the use of the atmosphere as a medium for sending energy from point A to point B, are well documented. The documents of Tesla were eventually confiscated at the close of his life, especially as they related to military matters, and he is generally now accepted as an unrecognized genius. The current incarnation of ionospheric heating is able to, according to Mr. Eastlund, put unprecedented amounts of power in the Earth's atmosphere at strategic locations, and to maintain that power level with the pulsing of energy. This patent also recommends the use of large clouds of barium so that ionization by sunlight will increase the electron density within the plasma environment. Testing and analysis does now positively indicate the presence of unusual levels of barium, a toxic element, within atmospheric samples. The amount of power inherent in the design of the HAARP project is further indicated by Mr. Eastlund stating that the present invention can be formed to simulate or perform the same functions as a detonation of a heave-type nuclear device without actually having to detonate such a device. A heave weapon has the effect of lifting the magnetic field of the Earth itself and involves the expenditure of massive amounts of energy. The patent is further stated to have numerous military implications, including the enhancement of or interference with communication and guidance systems, including those of airplanes and missiles, radar interference, missile destruction, weather modification, material transport of micron-sized particles, and molecular change of the atmosphere are each mentioned as further applications of the patent design. The executive summary for the HAARP project also specifically mentions forcing the descent of particles from the atmosphere toward the ground using ELF radiation from HAARP. Clearly, environmental modifications, the electromagnetic transfer of energy, and military operations of global impact are already in sight from the existence of these aerosols within our atmosphere. In 1977, the United States Senate held hearings on the subject of biological testing by the Department of Defense on human subjects without their informed consent. In the opening statement, Senator Kennedy identifies the key issue of the hearings, the known use of Americans as unwitting human subjects for open-air germ warfare testing conducted in the public domain by officials of our own government. Furthermore, he poses the critical question, should a democratic people cede to its government the full responsibility of determining when secret tests on unwitting subjects are necessary to protect the nation's security? It appears that this key issue was never truly addressed, and that almost 30 years later, this responsibility is no longer a question that is even being posed to the public. It is a fact, however unpleasant and distressing the consideration may be, that biological components have been repeatedly identified in a series of tests of atmospheric samples over